Good afternoon, good evening to the folks joining from different parts of the globe. Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar session on Azure SQL database. My name is Noor Basha, Senior Marketing Manager at Winwire Technologies, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. As most of you know, we are hosting a series of webinars on topics like .NET, Visual Studio, AngularJS, Azure, and several other topics every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So today's topic for the session is building cloud apps using Azure SQL database. So before we start, let me highlight a few housekeeping items. So during the webinar, please feel free to pose questions and we'll try to answer as many as we can at the end. Recording and presentation of this session will be shared to you in next 24 to 48 hours. So with that, let me take this opportunity to introduce you to today's session speaker, my colleague, Mr. Sandeep Tamisetti. Sandeep is a technical lead at Winwire Technologies, and he brings over 10 plus years of experience in the IT industry. With that, I would like to turn it over to Sandeep. Sandeep, over to you.
Thanks, Noor. Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. So today I'll be walking you through building cloud applications using Azure SQL database. So let me quickly introduce myself. I am Sandeep, working as a technical lead at Winwire Technologies. So let's jump in to see what SQL Azure is all about and what you can do with it. So here is the agenda for today. So we'll be discussing some of the features of SQL Azure and what all good things that it can bring onto your table, and the service types of capabilities it brings to you. And let's try to understand elastic database pools and DTUs, and we'll discuss some of the security aspects and a powerful feature, Geo Replication. And we'll also talk about a little bit about migrations. If you have existing databases, so we'll see how you can migrate your existing databases to SQL Azure. So if you have any questions, we can probably take them at the end. So with that, let's just see what is Azure SQL database. So SQL Azure is basically a SQL Server based relational database offered as a service from Microsoft. So it is residing on cloud, and all the infrastructure maintenance is done by MSIT team, so that you can focus more on your app development. So that will certainly accelerate your time to market. Okay, let's try to understand why Azure SQL. So here are some of the features that I'm trying to highlight. The first thing is highly available. So the availability is one biggest thing that SQL Azure is offering to you. So Microsoft is promising a 4.9 SLA, like 99.99% availability. And the second thing is manageability. So SQL Azure offers you a very good user interface so that you can manage all your databases very easily, and you don't have to be an administrator to manage all your stuff. And scalability. So your databases can really scale up to thousands of databases with very minimal efforts. Familiarity. So what are the new tools that I would like to or should I learn to work with SQL Azure? The answer is you really don't have to learn anything new. If you're good with SQL Server and TSQL, that's all you need to know. So the next thing is predictable performance. You can dial up and down. So for example, if one of your databases is experiencing an unpredictable load, so managing that instantly is really a difficult task for you. So with elastic database pools, Microsoft is trying to achieve that. So let's look at that in a couple of minutes. And the next thing is data protection. So how protected is your data? So when your SQL database is on the cloud, so who can access it? So how is your data protected? So that we're going to see in a few minutes. And the last thing is self-managed. So Microsoft is promising you can manage your databases with nearly zero maintenance. So the server patching and other maintenance stuff is handled by MSIT team, so that you can focus more on your app development. All right. So the SQL Azure database features are offered in different service tiers, so called basic, standard, and premium. basic being at the low level and premium being at the highest level. So let's closely look at this, what is offering what. So basic is suitable for low transactional workload databases, and standard is like medium transactional databases, and premium is suitable for business critical databases with high traffic. And elasticity. So all these three tiers offer elastic database pools, which we're going to talk in a minute. And performance. Basic offers you a comparatively less performance, and premium offers you the highest possible performance. Business continuity. So how can you continue with the business in case of any disasters? So for example, if you have your a database located in a specific database data center located at a specific geographic location, and if it undergoes some downtime for some reason, so how would you continue with your business? So standard and premium will offer you a feature called Geo Replication, where you can replicate your data on other data centers at a different geographical location. So we are going to see that. And programming surface. So all these three tiers are fully compatible with SQL Server 24/7. And availability, like we already said, Microsoft is promising a 4.9 SLA, like 99.99% availability. Okay, with that, let's just quickly jump into SQL Azure and see how you can create a simple database. Okay. Log into portal.azure.com with your Azure account. So I'm going to show you like how your home page looks like. So let's give it a second to load. And there you will see, other than a SQL database, you will see many features like virtual machines and other Azure resources. So these are all the stuff you can do with Azure. So here is our place of importance, like SQL databases. So let's just click there and see. So if you have already created some databases, so that should be listed out here. So right now there is no database. Let's go ahead and add one. All right, click on the add button. It should load your wizard so that you can easily create a database. All right, it's taking a couple of seconds. Okay, so here, give some database name, and the second option is server. So this is your logical server. This is not a physical server. This server is used to manage a group of your databases. For example, if you want to create a firewall for a certain group of databases and things like that, you can actually use this logical server to manage your databases as a group. So let's go ahead and create a new server. So it should load. So the server name should be unique globally. Azure demo server. So let's see. Oh, that's not available. So I'll add WinWire Azure demo server. Okay. So this is going to be your admin login for your database. So let's just create. I'm going to give a simple name and going to create a super secret password. Okay. And location, you can select the region which is nearest to you. So let me go ahead and select South Asia. So your database will go into that data center. Okay. So say OK, and then your server should be created. Let's see. Right. Okay. You got your server created, and that is appearing here. And next, the source of your database. You have three different options. Either you can create a blank database, or you can create a sample database like AdventureWorks, or if you already have a backup file, you can simply restore here. So to keep things simple, let me use a sample database. Okay, so let me select AdventureWorks, and yeah, and your pricing tier would be standard S2. So I'll come back to this option. And the next option is collation. Collation is something that will manage your language and character options. And the resource group is something, if you have if you want to group other resources along with this as a group and manage them, then you need to put it under this group. Okay, with that, let's just try to create a database. So it's trying to create a database. So while that takes a couple of minutes, let's just continue with the topic. Okay, so let's try to understand what is a SQL Azure Elastic Pool. For example, if you have a production database which is experiencing a heavy traffic load during a festival season, which you did not predict. So handling that kind of scenarios is a difficult task. So now SQL Azure has come up with something called Elastic Pool, where you manage your performance of the databases as a group, so as a pool. So here what happens is you allocate performance to a pool rather than an individual databases. So what is the advantage of it? So let's just look at it. For example, if you look at here, you have a group of databases. For example, one of them is experiencing a heavy traffic during some specific season. So SQL Azure will identify that and assign more number of DTUs to that specific database so that it can scale. So it will assign a less number of DTUs to the one that is experiencing a low traffic. But what is a DTU? Let's try to understand that. Okay, so understanding DTUs. DTU is basically a database transaction unit. It's a relative measure for the performance of your database. So for example, if a database has 5 DTUs, it means that it can complete 5 transactions per second. So let me try to show you what different service type offers you what level of DTUs. Okay, so here is the thing, like basic offers you up to 5 maximum DTUs, and in standard tier, so 10 being the lowest number of DTUs and 100 being the highest level of DTUs. And for premium, you have the low 125 DTUs and at maximum 1750 DTUs. So premium P11 service style will offer you the highest possible performance by SQL Azure. Okay, let's go back and see if our database has been created. It is still taking a while. All right, let's continue. So, for example, okay, I love the features of SQL Azure, but I'm working on a different language. Can I be able to work with SQL Azure? The answer is yes. For example, if you're a fan of Ruby and still want to work with SQL Azure, you have some database drivers provided for you. If you take a look here, there is free TDS, on top of which you have tiny TDS. Free TDS is an open source database driver which lets you connect to SQL Server. For example, if you're developing an app in Java and want to manage your database in SQL Azure, so you have JDBC driver that lets you connect to SQL Server. And here is the language stack that you can work with to connect to SQL Azure. All right, let me just go back and see. It's still taking a while. All right, let's go ahead. Okay, so let's quickly take a look at some of the security aspects of SQL Azure. So, and while developing any app, security is the biggest concern. So how can you secure your database? So first thing is connection security. All right, so if you're managing your database on SQL Azure, so can somebody else log into my database? So how can I restrict that? So what you can do is you can create a firewall at logical server level and write a rule to filter out the IPs. You can allow only whitelisted IP addresses so that any client from that particular IP address is only able to access to your database. The next thing is authentication. So how do I control authentication to my database server or database? So you can do 2 things. So SQL authentication. So if you remember, while creating the database, so I created a user, admin user. So apart from that, you can also create additional users and give permission on that database. And the second thing is you can manage your users in Active Directory and give permission to that user so that they can connect to your Azure SQL database. Authorization. How can I manage permissions to my users? Okay, so you can do several things. Like you can create roles for your users and give permission. You can grant permission like read, write, execute, things like that. And you can also provide row level security, which means you can restrict your users from viewing a set of rows. You can let your user see only a specific set of rows. The next thing, data masking. Data masking is a powerful feature where, for example, if you have some sensitive data like credit card information and you want your users to see only the last 4 characters of it. So how do you do? So it's pretty easy. You can simply write a masking rule so that it shows only 4 characters, 4 last characters. When some user logs in and queries your data, it will show you only the last 4 characters, and the rest characters are masked out. Encryption. So when you're working with your database backup files and all, you can actually protect your data or files with encryption. The last thing is auditing. So auditing is something that comes out of the box for your SQL Azure database. So it logs all your events so that you can keep monitoring if there is any suspicious activity. You can, if you find one, you can take an action on that. Okay, let's just move on. So to create a firewall, so this is something you should be doing. Go to your logical server and go to the firewall section and create a rule, and you can provide your IP range here. So let me just go back and see if my database, yeah, my database is ready. So now go to SQL databases and see, you should be able to see them. All right, that's there. Okay, it's there. So this is going to be your server name. So now the question is, how do I connect to my server and the database here? So let me show you right away how can you connect to that. Now I only know the server name. So let's see if I'll be able to log into this. Okay, let me just win my Azure demo server. Okay, so let's try to build a connection. Azure demo server. And you should be using SQL authentication, and let me try to log in with the user that I created. Okay, let's try if I can connect. We'll see. So if you remember, there is some option called connection security. If I know just the name and able to connect, that means there is no security. Let's look at the error here. So it is not able to establish connection. So let's see why it is that. Okay, when where Azure demo server. Okay. You should be giving the complete name. Database dot Windows dot. Let's look at the name. Give the complete server name. Okay. Windows.net. All right. Let's try again. Okay. So look at the error. So cannot open server requested by this login. The client with this IP address is not allowed. So this is more of a security feature. So just with the name, you'll not be allowed. So to connect to that database, this client has to be authorized. So what should I do now? So let's go, and for this server, go to the firewall section and create a rule here. Okay, let me write hello my local IP. So by default, it shows you like your browser IP. If not, what you can actually do is you just go to whatismyip.com and see what is your IP, and you need to provide this here. So yeah, let's see. So right now I'm providing start and end IP here. So it is done. Let me save it. Okay, it's taking a couple of seconds. Okay, let's try it again now. It's successfully saved. Let's try to connect again. So it should be connecting now. That's good. We are there. Let's look at what data I have. So your database is here, and let's look at the tables. Because I created from a sample database, so it should be loading some of the tables by default. So let's look at the data, if there is any. So you should be able to see some rows. Let's see. Okay, let's execute this. Okay, so there you go. So it's that simple. So you don't have to learn anything new. Just connect to your Azure database server, and your database is there. All right. Let's jump into our presentation. So here is the firewall that we have just created. So this is how you should be creating it. Next, Geo Replication. So for example, if you're managing your database on a specific data center location, and if you want to have control on your disaster recovery management, for example, if this data center is experiencing a downtime for some reason, and you want to continue with your business, what you can do is you can have replicas of your data on different regions, like different geographic location data centers. So that you can do with SQL Azure. So that you can continue with your business anytime. Okay, now, I just love the SQL Azure, but I'm working on a different database. Can I migrate my data to SQL Azure? Yes. So here is some of the databases. You can actually migrate your data into SQL Azure. Pretty much any relational data can be moved into SQL Azure. So let's look at some of the techniques that we can use to migrate your data to SQL Azure. So one thing is you can use SQL Server integration services, where you can have your source database and your destination would be your SQL Azure. And in the integration services, you should be mapping your tables and columns. So with that mapping, SQL Server integration service is quite capable of migrating your data to SQL Azure. And next thing, if you're using SQL Server on premises, then what you can do is you can simply run a wizard from SQL Server Management Studio, and this is how you can migrate your data to SQL Azure. On the other hand, what you can do is you can create backpack files and migrate your data. When you're creating backpack files, you can do two things. If you want to migrate only the schema, you can do that. If you want your schema plus data, you can do that as well. So what you have to do is you have to export your SQL Server data as backpack file, and you need to import that in SQL Azure. All right. So let's look at some of the points where I'm trying to compare SQL Server on-premises and Azure SQL. So SQL Server on-premises supports Windows authentication, and Azure SQL, since it is hosted on a different server and not in your domain, so that cannot support your local domain users. On the other hand, it can support SQL authentication and users from Azure Active Directory. And SQL Server on-premises needs IT staff to manage it, and SQL Azure is managed by MSIT, and it also supports Geo Replication. And SQL Server on-premises doesn't handle unpredictable loads. Like we already discussed, Azure SQL is capable of handling them using elastic database pools. SQL Server on-premises can support CLR store procedures and support for service broker, whereas Azure SQL cannot support these two. When you're migrating your data that has for example, say service broker, you might have to think of using Azure queues instead of service broker. All right, let's look at some of the business motivations for choosing Azure SQL. So on top of everything else, the cost. So if you look at billing and licensing, so SQL Azure is offered as a service. For example, if you want to set up SQL Server on premises, you need to purchase the license of SQL Server database. But when you create a database in SQL Azure, so it is offered as a service. So it reduces a lot of cost, a lot of initial cost for you. And the next thing is service level agreement. Microsoft is promising an SLA of 99.99%. So managing that on yourself is a difficult task. And time to market. Since Microsoft is taking care of your scalability and availability, you can focus more on your app development, and the infrastructure maintenance is done by MSIT team. So the next thing is administration. Like we said, Microsoft is taking care of your server patching and all other maintenance tasks. So you don't have to worry about it, and you can focus more on your application development. That will certainly help you in your speedy market rate. So I think that should give you a high-level overview of what is SQL Azure and what you can do with it. So I'll just pass on here and see if you have any questions. I'll try to answer.
Thanks, Sandeep. Thanks for the wonderful session and a quick demo. Yes, like I do have few questions coming in. Again, like I'm requesting folks to start typing in their questions in the questions dialog. The first question, Sandeep, is can I add more users to the logical server?
Yes, you can.
Okay, got it. So the other question is, how can I connect to SQL Azure from my application?
Okay, so like I already showed you, like for example, if you have, okay, for example, if you're developing an app and you want to connect from your application to SQL Azure, so let's go to your database and see, you can see the connection strings option here. So if you click on that, so it'll give you the set of connection strings for different database drivers. So let's look at that. Okay, so if you're using ADO.NET, so you should be using this connection string. If you're using ODBC, this is the one. If you're using PHP, you can use this connection string, and for JDBC, this is the one. So I think that should answer your question, Noor.
Yeah, I think that's a cool way to do that. So thanks, Sandeep. So the other question is, what time zone is used for audit logging?
All right, that's a good question. So since Microsoft has data centers at different geographic locations, irrespective of wherever your database is located, SQL Azure is, SQL Azure uses a UTC time zone.
Okay, thanks. So the other question is, my IP address keeps changing, more like a dynamic. How do I deal with it?
All right, yeah. Okay, for example, let me quickly show you that. Okay, where am I? Okay. Go to your server. Okay, let me just go to firewall option and show you. Okay, this is your firewall option where we have created a simple rule to allow your IP address. That's a good question. So for example, this is my IP and this keeps changing. So you can do two different things. From your network provider, you can request for a static IP address, or on the other hand, what you can do is you can request him the range where your address keeps changing. So he can give you the lower IP address and the higher IP address. So you can use that range to create that rule. So that should solve your problem.
Cool, thanks. So the last question what I have is it possible to integrate my internal Active Directory system with Azure Active Directory?
So Active Directory, so to connect with your SQL Azure database, so your user should be in SQL Azure Active Directory.
Okay. Thanks, Sandeep. I know we are almost there. I still see some of the questions coming from the audience, but in the interest of time, what we would do is we would take those questions offline, and we will have Sandeep answer to those questions to you in next 24 to 48 hours. So before we end up this session, I would like to thank everyone for taking time to join this webinar, and I hope you found it informative. As you can see on the screen, our next webinar is again on the Azure, where we'll be talking on Azure Remote App for Enterprise Architecture. And we look forward you joining to this next webinar. Thanks and have a good day. Thanks, Sandeep, for the wonderful session.
Thank you all. Thanks for joining.